Hello and welcome back to Beckler Guitars and Repair. And today I've got a whole bunch of TEMU pedals. So the coolest thing about these pedals is the price. Each one of these pedals, and I've got 10 of them here, cost about $17 Canadian. So in today's day and age, you know, pedals are getting more and more expensive. Pedals can be anywhere from like $100 to $300 to $400 for a single effect pedal. So these are crazy cheap by comparison. Now, I've done another video on these TEMU pedals before, and the pedals that I had reviewed previously, the biggest criticism was that they had really cheap plastic chassis. So I've taken one out of the box here. This is one of the ones I'll be reviewing today. Again, I've got 10 more like this, and these are metal chassis, and they do appear to be quite a bit higher quality than the ones that I was looking at before. And these ones were about $5 more. I believe the other pedals that I had reviewed were closer to $11. These are closer to $17. So today we're just gonna check them all out. We're gonna do a playing demo of each one, see how they sound. I'll unbox one and take it apart so we can look at the insides. And we'll just see if these things are any good for the, you know, very low price that they are. Let's check it out. Alright, so I did get these off TEMU. I'm going to put the link in the description here. They seem to be readily available. And unlike the last pedals that I reviewed from TEMU, they're not unbranded. This one actually has a brand associated with it. They're called TEMU Pedals. And yeah, it comes in these little bubble wrap package and a little box. This is a different one than the one I showed before. Let's see what this one is. Comes in a little bag. And this is the analog chorus. So again, yeah, it says TEMU analog chorus. And most of them, yeah, they're both side mounted. So you've got your input and your output. They're both labeled. Looks like it's a 9-volt adapter, 300 milliamps. And let's just see what else comes in the box. Mostly, let's see. It looks like it doesn't come with individualized instructions. It's just one instruction for all the pedals here. So I'm just going to open them all out and get them out here. Alright, so here they are all together out of the boxes. It looks like they come in about 4 different colors: the mint green, the orange, the blue, and the yellow. And they're all the same size, metal chassis. They're all different combinations of switches and knobs depending on the effect. And they all say TEMU. That's the branding for all of them. So we've got the vintage phase, the fuzz, the ultimate drive, compressor, US dream, analog delay, vintage overdrive, tremolo, analog chorus, and classic chorus. And I'm just going to pick one randomly so we can open it up and have a look at the insides and have a look at the circuits. I don't really know what I'm looking at, but someone watching might want to see that. So I'm not going to do that for all the pedals, just this one for now so we can have a look, and then we'll start plugging them in and seeing how these things sound. And they all have the same layout in terms of like power supply, input, output. You do need an adapter for these. I don't think you can put a battery in these things, but we'll know more once we take them apart here. It comes with this little sticker on the back. It says AC DC adapter, 300 milliamps. And to get to the screws, it looks like they're under these little sticky rubber pads here. So we're going to have to remove these to take it apart. Okay, here's a look at the back. Looks a lot like the other pedals that I had reviewed. You can't really see much from the back here, so I'm going to have to take off the knobs and the front washer and nut here so that I can see what's on the front. Alright, so here's the pedal deconstructed. So you got the back plate, you got your chassis, and then this is the circuit board. So yeah, it looks fairly basic. However, yeah, I would argue that it looks like it's worth more than $17, especially if it sounds any good. But yeah, here's what it looks like for those that know what they're doing. And I would assume all of them are pretty similar. Again, I'm not going to take them all apart, but I just wanted to see what kind of makes one tick before we move ahead. Okay, so I'm going to reassemble this and we'll get started on trying out the different pedals. Alright, all back together, no harm done. I think we're going to start off with the vintage overdrive to see what that sounds like. Alright, so for this test I'm going to be using my ES335 in the bridge position. I just really like these pickups. They're super articulate and clear sounding. They're not muddy at all, so you can really hear the pedal. I'm also going to be using my Dr. Z prescription extra strength. Really clean amp. One of the biggest criticisms I got on my last test was my amp was a little bit too overdriven. So we were getting a little bit more of that breakup in the pedal sounds before I even turned them on. So I'm going to keep it really clean. Some people might have the issue with the fact that I'm using pretty expensive gear to showcase like $17 pedals. My argument to that is if you're using really cheap gear like these pedals on really cheap amplifiers, it doesn't matter if the pedal's good. It's going to sound really bad. This is going to give it the best chance to hear what the pedal actually sounds like, because what I'm using is the Dr. Z. It's a really honest sounding amplifier. It's super, you know, clear. If I use a bad pedal or bad gear on it, you can really tell because it just basically amplifies the original sound really, really well. So if these sound bad, we're going to be able to tell right away. But if they sound good, you know that you can use them with, you know, even higher end amps and stuff like that. All right, let's get started. Okay, so before we start, I'm just a little confused on what power supply to use. So on the back of the pedal, it says AC adapter DC 9 volt, 300 milliamps. And then in the user's manual, not sure if that'll clear up or not, but it does say 9 volt DC, 9 volt power adapter. But then on the front of every pedal, it says DC 12 volt. So I did try with a 9 volt and everything seems to be working. So I'm just going to stick with the 9 volt here. The first one we're going to start with is the vintage overdrive. It's just got a tone knob, a volume knob, and a drive knob. So I'm going to try to set the volume the same in each video so all the pedals are roughly the same. And I'm going to try to dial in the tone knob that sounds the best, and then just kind of leave it. I might move it around a little bit so we can get an idea of the range. But let's start with the vintage overdrive. All right, yeah, actually, I think that's a really, really good sounding pedal. It's got a lot of a variation there. You can get the drive down way down low for just a tiny bit overdrive, but you can really crank it, and you can get a lot out of it. So, and it's got quite a nice sound to it. So yeah, decent pedal. I'm going to move on to the analog delay next. So this pedal has mix, which is like your dry wet, and then you've got time and repeats. Let's see how this one sounds. Yeah, you know, I really like that one too. I just like the sounds, and a lot of different variations you can get out of that with the time and the mix and the repeat. You can get a lot of different sounds out of this pedal, and it sounds like, yeah, a proper analog delay pedal. So yeah, moving along, the next one we have is the Ultimate Drive. Okay, so with this pedal we've got a few more options. So we've got a three-way switch. However, it only says high and low on the pedal, so I'm not sure what the middle position does. It's got tone, level. Again, we're going to keep the level about the same each one, about 1 o'clock, and then we'll dial in the tone, and then we'll work with the gain and the different positions here. Okay, this one I did not really like. I had to crank the tone just to get any definition, otherwise it was just really, really muddy. But just no definition in that mud either. You couldn't even really use it for like heavy riffs or anything else like that. It was just pretty bad sounding pedal in my opinion. And the middle and the top positions are exactly the same. So the middle position did nothing. I think this was probably supposed to be a two-way switch. I don't know why you put a three-way in there because these are both the same position. And yeah, did not like this one. Let's move on to the tremolo pedal, which was is the one I'm looking forward to trying out the most actually. Okay, here it is apart, and yeah, I'm just going to plug it in, see if I can see anything noticeable. Again, I do not know what I'm looking for. It still flashes, but there's no difference to the sound. I did notice this weird thing that's covered here. So it looks like that one mint flavored capacitor. I'm not sure what that is at all. It's covered by this heat tape, I think. Probably because it heats up or something, I'm not sure. But I'm just going to leave it on there. And I just had this plugged in and it's still not working, but I did have one other idea. It does say 9-volt DC on the back, but I'm going to go ahead and try a 12 volts. Maybe that will make it work, because it seems like it's working. I just don't know if the voltage is right. So I'm going to put it back together. I'm going to put it on a 12 volt adapter, and then we'll try that. But for those of you who want to see the circuit, I'm just going to show it to you. Again, I'm not really sure what I'm looking at. But okay, I'm going to go ahead and put it back together. Alright, so I figured out the problem with the tremolo pedal. So even though it says 9 volt on the back and in the manual, it does say 12 volt up here, so I figured I'd try 12 volt because it would turn on with a 9 volt. I just wasn't getting any sound difference. So I tried it with the 12 volt, and sure enough, yeah, it does work. So that might have been the issue I had last time with my tremolo pedal from TEMU that didn't work. I might have been needing to use the 12 volt power supply on that. But anyway, it does work, so let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. And this is just a PSA, you do need a 12 volt power supply for this tremolo pedal. Okay, yeah, so it works. It seems like I got a lot of volume loss when I turned it on. Like my volume went down quite a bit. And then depending on the intensity, you can't really hear it much unless your intensity's past at least 1 o'clock. But yeah, it sounds decent. I think you would just have to jack up your volume a little bit when you're using it. And it's, you know, really hard to find a tremolo pedal for under $100. So for $17, I think it does what it's supposed to for the most part. Okay, let's move on to the vintage phase pedal. Alright, this pedal is super simple. It's just got the one repeat button. So let's see how it sounds. Alright, there it is. Pretty basic pedal. You can get a few different sounds out of the repeat, but not a ton of different variations there. In the, you know, maxed out, you can't really make anything sound good there. That's just a little bit too much. So yeah, it sounds like a vintage phase. I don't use this effect too much, but I can see its merit. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to the US Dream. So I did a little looking into this pedal because I wasn't really sure what they were going for with this. And apparently this pedal is based off of a Sur pedal, which is based off of a Marshall. So I think it's more of a British Dream, but let's go ahead and just see how it sounds. Okay, the US Dream. Yeah, I thought at the lower distortion levels you get that really nice kind of like dirty, kind of a plexi sound, and then you get the distortion really super high. You can get that nice higher gain type stuff. Overall, I like the way it sounded. It sounded pretty good to me. You have to really dial in that tone per guitar. I can see that. Otherwise, some guitars are going to sound muddy. Some guitars are going to sound really, really trebly unless you get that properly dialed in. But yeah, for a $17 pedal, I thought that sounded pretty good. Okay, we're going to move on to the analog chorus. And this one just has rate and depth. Okay, so yeah, it sounded quite good. I don't use a lot of chorus in my own playing, but yeah, it's a sweet sounding chorus. It sounds like a vintage chorus. So let's go ahead and move on to the fuzz pedal. So the fuzz pedal has your volume, your tone. On fuzz pedals, I really like to crank the tone to get a little bit more definition. Otherwise, it sounds a little bit muddy to me. You've got a fuzz knob here. You've also got normal and mid cut. So let's try this out. Okay, yeah, this fuzz was actually pretty surprising. I quite like it. A lot of versatility when you go from like the very low fuzz to cranking it. You can get more of like nice overdriven sounds, all the way up to super, super, super fuzzy tones. And then this mid cut is kind of like a really woolly, Velcro ripping vintage sort of fuzz that sounds quite different depending on where you're dialing it in too. So quite a versatile fuzz, and I enjoyed the way it sounded. It's a good one. All right, we've got two pedals left, this and the compressor. So this is a classic chorus. So the analog chorus says rate and depth, and this one says rate and width. So let's see how this one sounds. Alright, again, I don't use much chorus myself, but this one sounded pretty sweet. I'm sure you could dial in a lot of cool sounds with that. I think I liked it a little bit better than the analog, but I would say it was close. Okay, now on to the most exciting pedal, the compressor pedal. Let's see what this one sounds like. So this one, the sustain was acting a little bit like a volume, and I kind of get why. But when you crank them both, it was actually really overdriven too. So I don't know if that's a feature or a bug. I'm not sure. It sounded okay to me. I don't use a lot of compressors, so I can't really compare them to a lot that I know. But you were listening. If you think it was good, let me know in the comments. It's not as knowledgeable on compressors. So yeah, overall, I thought they were really good quality pedals. I really enjoyed a lot of the sounds. And again, for $17, you can't really go wrong. I'm going to put the link in the description for these pedals. I know that TEMU kind of carries what they carry, and sometimes these products go out of stock or they disappear for a while. So they're also location dependent, so the link might not work for your location. But you can always keep an eye out for these pedals. Again, these are the Saiyan pedals. These ones have the branding on there. And they turned out to be really nice. My favorite was probably the US Dream. That was a really, really good sounding pedal. It's pretty hard to get a tremolo pedal for like $100, let alone $17. So that was really cool. Again, this pedal alone did not work with a 9-volt power supply. It needed 12. So that's something you should keep in mind if you're planning on getting this pedal. And nowhere on any of the instruction manuals or boxes or the back of the pedal does it say that. But I mean, the vintage phaser sounded really good. Again, I didn't like the ultimate drive. The fuzz was awesome, actually. You get a lot of different sounds out of it. It might not be for everyone in terms of the breakup noise, but it sounded quite nice. The analog delay was really good. Vintage overdrive, I really liked. The US Dream was probably one of my favorites because you get that really cranked Marshall sound, but you can back it off and get a really serviceable overdrive. The compressor, I don't use much compressors. Tremolo sounded really nice. And then the chorus is another pedal that I don't really use that much, but they were both very serviceable and they sounded really good. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you for tuning in to Beckler Guitars and Repair, and I'll have more for you really soon. Thanks a lot.